Hey guys, Yipshare here with another video today, and this is going to be the final wrap-up before patch 7.1.5. And the reason I wanted to make a wrap-up video for 7.1.5 is recently a lot of simulations have been released regarding Warlock legendaries, enchants, 2-target builds, and single-target builds, and I really wanted to give you guys all the information on that as well as my opinion on that and how everything's going to work together. And hopefully this video will be the last one that really prepares you for 7.1.5 and really brings it all together. So these sims were made by a guy named Gatto. Gatto is a Affliction Warlock, and he is on the Warlock Discord forums, and he comes up with all the profiles for the Affliction Warlock before the patch hits, so really big shout out to him for coming together and putting all of these things together, taking the time to run all these simulations. I've run a lot of simulations myself, but I haven't been able to coordinate it all and put it together and really map it out like he has, so really big credit to the guy Gatto. So anyways, these are the results for the sims of all the builds and everything, and we'll get into it. So this one that you're looking at right now has to do with the pets. So the Grimoire basically says still that you're going to be picking supremacy over service, and I talked about that a little bit in my last video, and the reason I wanted to bring your attention to again is just really amplifies how important those soul shards are and how valuable unstable affliction is in the current expansion. So you can see that supremacy is still pulling ahead of service by approximately 14,000 DPS. Now 14,000 DPS is about 3% deep increased DPS, but you also have to consider that service does do more damage than supremacy. Like as a talent on its own, the pets that you get from service do more damage than the Doomguard on its own if you're using those shards. But you have to consider that you're spending 5 to 7 to 8 soul shards each boss fight on service, and all of those could go into unstable affliction and increasing all your other dot damage output. So it's just not worth it. It's just not worth the globals. It's not worth the energy that you have to spend on those shards to run a build like service. And you see that sacrifice is really trailing quite far behind on single targets. So basically what this is showing you is that you should always be running supremacy in any of your builds come 7.1.5, just because the DPS is so much higher than any other build that you could be running. Obviously, if you're a service fanboy and you really want to run with that fell puppy, you won't be too far behind. You'll be about 3% DPS behind on maximal potential, but on average you definitely do want to be running that Doomguard permanent pet. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is legendaries. So after the pets, I want to talk about legendaries. And the reason I wanted to bring your attention to legendaries is I want to show you how close they all are together. So basically you have the Hood of Eternal Disdain, Reap and Sow, Kil'jaeden's Burning Wish, Sindori's Spite, Sheraton's Shackles, Power Chord, and Pride As. Now if you don't know what these legendaries do, I do recommend checking my past videos where I do talk about legendaries and what they all of their effects are. But these are going to be all your DPS legendaries, basically. Up to Pride As is going to be your DPS legendaries. Everything below that is going to be utility. So if we just look at the DPS legendaries from Pride As to Hood of Eternal Disdain, the difference in DPS is about roughly 30,000, okay? Now, 30,000 DPS, when some people are doing 600k DPS, that's roughly 5%, okay? So the difference between the worst legendary, which is Pride As, and the best legendary, which is Hood, and keep in mind this is running an effigy build, and when you do run an effigy build, Hood is increased because you have Writhe on 2 targets. The difference is only 5% between the neck and the helmet, okay? 5% while it is relevant, if you have any combination of the legendaries in between, you know what I mean? If you have Reap and Sow and Pride As or any of the utility, if you have Hood and any of the, you know what I mean? All of these DPS combinations are going to be within 3 or 4% of one another. And when it comes down to 3 or 4% DPS, it's all going to come down to playstyle. It's all going to come down to who's playing better. Obviously, on the max level, the person that have the best legendaries will be doing the best DPS. But things like RNG and things like that definitely will come to effect. But what you can really look forward to is the fact that with all of these builds, that there's no really one legendary that super stands out from above the rest. Before, Hood would have been way up here, you know what I mean? Hood would have been at 620k DPS, way above the rest. But you see it's brought down within range of the other ones. Obviously, the new legendaries that they released, the Kil'jaeden's Burning Wish, which is the trinket, Reap and Sow, which is the cloak, are very close to the Hood, while the other ones, Sheraton's Shackles and Power Chord, are a little bit behind. But overall, these legendaries are all extremely powerful in their own right, and obviously Norgannon's does receive a lot of value because of the movement ability effect, so you can expect to see it somewhere up here in the mix as well. Moving on to more legendary talk, this has to do with this Soul Conduit build. So before it was Effigy, so if you don't want to play with Effigy, you want to play with Soul Conduit, this is the chart you should be looking at. This is going to be the one that has to deal with legendaries on running the Malefic Grasp Soul Conduit build. And you can see the gap closes even more. You see that the Hood, the Kil'jaedens, Reap and Sow, they're all extremely close together. Power Chord extremely close. Sindori Spite, Shackles, extremely close. Pride, extremely close. All the legendaries, even the worst legendary for Affliction, which is, you know, basically nothing, Norganon's, is within 30,000, which is roughly 5.5% when talking about these numbers. You know what I mean? Like, Sindora Spite is within 2%, Shackles within like 2 or 3%, you know what I mean? Power Chord within 1%. All of these legendaries are extremely close together, and what that means is Blizzard did a really good job of making unique legendaries that have powerful effects, but all within range of one another. Yes, one is going to be the strongest, but obviously on some fights, you know, you're going to get crazy RNG on Power Chord, you're going to get good RNG on Reaps and things like that, and that's going to push them ahead of these baseline legendaries, right? So really look forward to this, really look forward to the fact that whether or not you have Hood or you have Safuz, you're still going to be doing competitive damage. It is not going to make or break you, and that's something that Blizzard really wanted to emphasize this patch, and I think they did a good job as an Affliction Warlock. So these last two were the ones on for legendaries on Soul Effigy and Soul Conduit, and what I wanted to talk about next is going to be 2-target cleave and Nighthold. Now, 2-target cleave and Nighthold is going to be a really big thing, because there's going to be a lot of fights where you're attacking more than one target, and you want to know what the best options for you are going to be on more than one target. So you can see here that the new legendaries, this is going to be with regards to legendaries, are really powerful on 2-target cleave, right? The new legendaries, Kill Jaden's, Burning Wish, and Reap and Sow, do pull it on ahead, but if you look at all the other legendaries, look at Shackles, look at Power Chord, look at Sindora's, look at the Neck, look how close they are together. They're within 20,000 DPS at a maximum of 700,000. You know what I mean? Like 20,000 DPS when people are doing 700k DPS is not a lot of DPS. So really just pick whichever legendaries you have and just use them. Use what you have most fun with, and you're going to be doing great results. So this is kind of the power list for the legendaries, and hopefully if you guys have like, you know, one or two, like one of the top ones and one of the middle ones, you'll be doing fine. Even if you have two of the lower ones, you're still going to be doing great DPS. And so yeah, that's going to be the legendaries. This is for 2 targets, so you can also see the damage on the secondary target, like the boss damage. So this is like the cleaving damage, this is the boss damage, and this is how much damage you're doing to the boss. So you see it's still very significant how much DPS you're going to be doing. Now, this is going to be one a lot of people should be interested in, because they released in the patch notes that they're going to be buffing all the neck enchants, and for Warlock, the new neck enchant to go for, the new one that's going to be the best on single target, AoE, everything is going to be the Trained Soldier, and that's going to be the bonus to 600 mastery. 600 mastery is just a lot of DPS by itself. It's, you know, 600 times like whatever the modifier of whatever 1 point of mastery gives you. It's like, you know, 15, 16 DPS points per mastery. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's a lot. Anyways, going to be a very good enchant to use, so I highly recommend everyone put Trained Soldier. It's going to be good for AoE and single target, so that's just that. You can see the numbers here, just comes out on top. Just use it. It's going to work for you. The next thing I wanted to talk about is single target. Now, the important thing to take away here is that Effigy is bugged on the Simcraft, or it's bugged on live servers, whichever one you prefer. It doesn't currently generate enough soul shards, or as many soul shards as it says it should. So take this with a grain of salt. Take this with a grain of salt that Effigy is not as good as it currently should be. So what you should be considering here is what build you want to run aside from Effigy. And if you do want to run Effigy, it's just not going to be as powerful as it does display here, but it still will be very strong. So the two builds that basically people are going to be running for single target is either going to be the Malefic Grasp Effigy build or the Malefic Grasp Soul Conduit build. Currently with the Effigy bug, the Malefic Grasp Soul Conduit build does come ahead of Effigy, but look at the variance on this Soul Conduit build. It's crazy, right? And this is obviously due to resets on UA, but you know what I mean? Like, still, 540k average is extremely good. If you look back at Writhe and Contagion, it's about 10,000 DPS less, and that's with the Effigy bug. So it's probably more like 30k DPS less or something crazy, right? So basically what this is telling you is the build that you're going to be wanting to run single target is the Malefic Grasp Contagion build that I was showing you guys, but it's really important to note that Soul Harvest is extremely close in DPS to Siphon Life single target. So if any fight where you can abuse Soul Harvest to make it even twice as good or something like that, it's definitely going to pull ahead. So keep in mind that Soul Harvest is also going to be a very good talent come Nighthold, but you're probably going to be wanting to run the Malefic Grasp, Contagion, Siphon Life, Soul Conduit single target build that I was going over in my last video for single target. So kind of ignore the Effigy ones here because Effigy is currently bugged. If they do fix Effigy, you can take those into consideration, but whatever Effigy says here, maybe subtract like 30 to 40,000 DPS off of it and go with the one that you want most. So that's for single target. You can clearly see that the Malefic Grasp builds, come way far ahead of anything else. This is the closest Writhe build. It's within 35k DPS. It's not even close. So without further ado, this is going to be the 2 target DPS builds that you're going to be learning to run. So this is going to be probably one of the most important charts I show you. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to explain to you if all this looks super confusing. I understand. I'm going to take a second. I'll break this one down really, really well for you so you understand what I'm talking about. What we have on the left side is the DPS done total to 2 targets, okay? What we have on the right side is the DPS done to the priority target. So basically what this means is that if there's 2 adds up, say like on a fight like Odin, where you have Odin and then you have a mini ad that spawns, this is going to be the DPS on the left that you do to the priority target, and on the right is going to be the DPS that you do to both targets combined. So you have to decide what's more important to you. Do you care about doing more damage, or do you care about doing more priority damage? Because you can see that the most damage you can run is Writhe, Absolute Corruption, Soul, Siphon Life, and Effigy. But the most boss damage is Malefic Grasp, Absolute Corruption, Soul Harvest, Effigy. And the reason that Malefic Grasp, Absolute Corruption, Soul Harvest, Effigy is going to be the best build is because you don't want to be maintaining more than 2 dots or 3 dots with Malefic Grasp because you just don't have enough time to channel. So when you're running Malefic Grasp, Absolute Corruption, you only have to maintain Agony on 2 targets, well 3 targets I guess, Effigy, the boss, and the secondary target. That's all you're maintaining is those 3 agonies, and then besides that you just Soul Harvest and dump your UAs into the main target. So you can see how much DPS potential this build is pulling ahead of all the other ones on single target. It's really, really good. Obviously, this build right here, the Absolute Corruption Soul Harvest build, if we want to find it on this side, you see it's down here at 688k. So that means that the Writhe build is roughly doing 40,000 more DPS to both targets combined, so roughly 40,000 more DPS to the secondary target, while this build is doing roughly 20,000 more DPS to the main target. However you really want to look at it, whichever way you want to go about doing it, whatever build you want to run, this is a good page to look at. Effigy will be very powerful on 2 targets. If you don't want to run Effigy, it's very, very important to recognize that Malefic Grasp, Absolute Corruption, Siphon Life, and Soul Conduit is extremely good on 2 targets. Very, very powerful. And basically what that means is if you don't want to run Effigy, you don't want to deal with dotting 3 targets, and you only really want to worry about targets that are actually in the game and not something that you create, you will be able to run this build. Yes, you will be doing about 30,000 DPS less, but you have to consider when people are doing 700k DPS, what 30,000 actually is. 30,000 is only like, 3 or 4%. It's not a huge significant portion. So run what you feel most comfortable with is basically the TLDR of this video. Run what you want because Blizzard did a good job at balancing all the builds. You see all the variations here. There's so many different variations that you can really run whatever you want and still get away with it. I hope you guys like this video. I hope this has helped you prepare that even bit more for 7.1.5, and I'll see you guys in the future.